The salt spray stung Erica Graham's face as she stood on the limestone balcony of Graymore Manor, watching the fishing boats return to the harbor below. At 23, she carried herself with the rigid posture her mother demanded. Her emerald silk dress perfectly pressed despite the coastal wind, her dark hair pinned in the severe style befitting a daughter of the Graham shipping fortune. But her hands gripped the stone balustrade until her knuckles went white, and anyone looking closely would have seen the trapped desperation in her eyes. Erica was known throughout coastal society as the difficult Graham daughter, the one with too many opinions and too few feminine graces. While her younger sister Isabella charmed suitors with demure smiles, Erica argued philosophy with her father's business partners, and was discovered reading forbidden political treatises in the library when she should have been practicing the grand piano. Her mother, Victoria Graham, made no secret of her frustration with having raised a daughter who frightened away every suitable match with her sharp tongue and sharper mind. That particular humid afternoon, Erica felt the walls of propriety closing in tighter than her stiff, boned bodice. Her father had just announced, with the same tone he used for shipping contracts, that she would accept the proposal of Cornelius Ashford III, a banking heir whose conversation never ventured beyond market speculation, and whose eyes glazed over when she spoke. The engagement party was set for Saturday. Her future was being sealed like a bill of lading. Unable to bear another moment in the suffocating drawing room where her mother was already planning seating arrangements, Erica slipped away through the servants' entrance. She walked quickly through the narrow coastal streets toward the docks, where the honest stink of fish and tar overwhelmed the cloying perfume of her trapped existence. Here, at least, no one expected her to smile vapidly or apologize for having thoughts. She was standing at the edge of the commercial pier, staring at the horizon, as if she could will herself across it, when she heard a commotion behind her. A cargo net had broken loose from a crane, swinging dangerously toward a group of workers. Before she could react, someone grabbed her arm and pulled her backward with surprising strength. She stumbled against a solid chest and looked up to find herself steadied by calloused hands. "Careful, Senora," a deep voice said quietly. Erica found herself looking into the most penetrating dark eyes she had ever seen. The man was perhaps 30, with sun-weathered olive skin and the lean, muscular build of someone who worked with his body. His clothing was simple, rough cotton trousers, and a worn linen shirt that smelled of salt and labor, and fishing nets were coiled over his broad shoulder. But there was something in the way he held himself, a stillness and precision that seemed at odds with his humble appearance. "Thank you," she managed, suddenly aware that a proper lady shouldn't be alone on the docks speaking to a fisherman. But she didn't step away. "I wasn't paying attention. You looked like you were trying to escape something," he observed, releasing her arm but not moving away. His voice was educated, the Italian accent refined despite his occupation. Or escape to something. Erica felt an unexpected jolt. No one in her world ever actually saw her. "Perhaps both," she admitted. He studied her for a moment with those unsettling dark eyes, then extended his hand in a gesture that was somehow both humble and commanding. "Emilio Mazzi. I keep a boat in the South Harbor." "Erica Graham," she replied, and watched something flicker across his face when she said her family name. Recognition, perhaps, or calculation, but his expression settled back into calm courtesy. "The Graham daughter," he said neutrally. "You're far from Graymore Manor." "Not far enough," she said before she could stop herself, then flushed at her indiscretion. Instead of the awkward reaction she expected, Emilio smiled slightly, an expression that suggested he understood far more than he was saying. "The manor must feel like a very beautiful prison for someone like you." The simple truth of it, spoken by a stranger who should have been invisible to her world, made something crack in her carefully maintained composure. "How could you possibly—" "Because I know what it is to wear a life that doesn't fit," he interrupted gently. "Though my constraints are simpler than yours, I suspect." They stood there in the fading afternoon light, the daughter of shipping fortune and the fisherman, while the working men around them loaded cargo and paid them no attention. Erica felt a strange vertigo, as if the solid ground of her predetermined life had suddenly shifted. "I should return," she said, but didn't move. "Yes," Emilio agreed, but something in his tone suggested he hoped she wouldn't. "Though if you need to escape again, Signora, the docks are here every day, and I keep my boat at the third slip past the customs house." That evening, while enduring her mother's tedious lecture about the importance of the Ashford alliance and her duty to the family's social position, Erica couldn't stop thinking about the fisherman with the educated voice and the eyes that saw too much. Fate, or something more deliberate, granted her wish. She encountered Emilio on the coastal path 3 days later, carrying his nets toward the boats in the early morning mist. He stopped when he saw her, unsurprised, as if he had been expecting her. "Good morning, Signorina Graham," he said formally, but his eyes held warmth. "Signor Mazzi," she replied, her heart inexplicably racing. "Walking alone again?" he asked. "Your family doesn't worry?" "My family doesn't notice," Erica said with more bitterness than she intended. "Unless I'm failing to perform my role adequately." Emilio shifted his nets and fell into step beside her without asking permission, a breach of propriety that should have offended her but instead felt perfectly natural. "And what role is that? Ornamental daughter? Advantageous marriage prospect? Living proof of the Graham family's social elevation?" The words spilled out of her with an honesty that shocked her. "I'm to marry a man who collects me like he collects shares in railroads. My opinions are considered unfeminine. My education is wasted. And I am reminded daily that I should be grateful for a fate I find suffocating." They walked in silence for a moment, and she expected him to offer the platitudes everyone else did about a woman's duty or her fortunate position. Instead, Emilio said quietly, "Intelligence is a lonely burden when it's not valued. Especially for women, I think. Your society fears what it cannot control." Erica stopped walking and stared at him. What fisherman speaks like that? His smile was enigmatic. One who reads, perhaps. One who has lived other lives before this one. Or one who simply pays attention to the world. "Signora."
Hey there, welcome back. If you're new and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Also, do check back tomorrow, because I will be giving you another story even more interesting with crazier twists than this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now, let's get back to the story.
The question lingered in the damp morning air between them. What fisherman speaks like that? But Emilio offered no further explanation. He simply adjusted the nets on his shoulder, the rough twine biting into his shirt, and continued walking. Erica found herself hurrying to keep pace, her silk slippers ill-suited for the rough cobblestones of the lower path. Yet she had no desire to turn back toward the suffocating luxury of Graymore Manor. "You speak of other lives," she ventured, her curiosity piquing. "Have you always been a fisherman?" "Emilio? The sea has always been part of my life," he answered evasively, his gaze fixed on the horizon where the sun was beginning to bleed gold across the gray water. "But I have not always cast nets in these waters. I arrived here 6 months ago." "From where?" "Naples," he said. The word carried a weight she couldn't identify, a mixture of fondness and something sharper, like grief or perhaps rage. "It is a city of fire and beauty, Signora, very different from this cold, orderly coast." "It sounds wonderful," she whispered, thinking of the maps she studied in her father's library, tracing the coastline of Italy with a gloved finger, dreaming of a warmth she had never felt. "Why leave?" Emilio stopped then, turning to face her fully. The early light caught the sharp angles of his face, illuminating a thin, jagged scar that ran from his jawline down into the collar of his shirt, a mark she hadn't noticed before. "Sometimes the only way to survive the fire is to walk away before it consumes you. And sometimes you leave to protect the things that cannot be protected from within." His intensity took her breath away. He spoke with the gravity of a general discussing a retreat, not a laborer discussing migration. I don't think Cornelius has ever spoken a sentence that meant so much," she admitted, a nervous laugh escaping her. "The banker?" Emilio's lip curled slightly, not in cruelty, but in dismissal. "Men who measure their worth in coins often struggle to understand things that cannot be bought." "He measures my worth in social standing," she said, looking down at her hands. "I am an acquisition, a merger." "You are a storm trapped in a bottle," Emilio corrected, his voice dropping to a rough whisper. He reached out, his calloused fingers hovering inches from her face before he seemed to catch himself and pulled back. "Do not let them break the glass, Erica. Once the spirit spills, it is impossible to gather back." The use of her first name, unadorned by titles, sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the sea breeze. It was an intimacy she hadn't granted, yet one she desperately craved. "I don't know how to stop them," she confessed, the despair rising in her throat again. "The engagement dinner is in 2 days. Half the town will be there. If I refuse him, my father will cut me off. I have no means, no trade, nowhere to go." Emilio looked at her, calculating. "There is always a choice. It just requires the courage to endure the consequences." He checked the position of the sun. "I must go. The tide waits for no man, not even a Neapolitan." He began to walk away, and panic seized her. She couldn't go back to the manor, back to the dress fittings and the lectures, without knowing when she would see him again. "Will you be here tomorrow?" she called out. He paused, glancing back over his shoulder. "I am at the docks every morning, Signora. But perhaps you should not be. People talk. And a Graham scene with a Mazzi, it would cause ripples." "I don't care about ripples," she declared, lifting her chin. "You should," he murmured, his eyes darkening. "For your own safety, if not your reputation." He left her there, confused and exhilarated. She watched him descend toward the harbor, his figure blending into the crowd of workers. He moved with a predatory grace that didn't belong to a fisherman. As she turned back toward the manor, she noticed a man in a dark suit standing by the old lighthouse, watching Emilio through a pair of opera glasses. When she looked again, the man was gone. A chill settled in her stomach. Emilio Mazzi was hiding something far more dangerous than a poetic soul. And God help her. She wanted to know what it was more than she wanted her next breath. The day of the engagement dinner arrived with the oppressive weight of a funeral. The entire morning was a blur of maids pulling laces tighter, her mother critiquing the pallor of her skin, and her father pacing the hallway, barking orders about the wine selection. Cornelius was due to arrive at 7, along with the mayor, several business tycoons, and the creme de la creme of their insular society. Erica felt like an actor in a play she hadn't rehearsed, reciting lines of gratitude while her soul screamed. By mid-afternoon, the house was swarming with florists and caterers. She needed air. She needed sanity. She told the head housekeeper she was going to the garden to compose herself. Instead, she ran down the cliff path to the harbor. She found Emilio repairing a net on the deck of a modest, weather-beaten trawler named La Speranza. He was shirtless, the sun gleaming on his olive skin, revealing a tapestry of scars on his back that looked like lash marks and knife wounds. He turned as she approached, pulling a shirt on quickly, but not before she saw a tattoo on his left shoulder, a complex, black design of a serpent eating its own tail, crowned with laurels. "Erica," he said, his surprise evident. "You should be preparing for your coronation." "My execution," she corrected, stepping onto the swaying wood of the boat. "I can't do it, Emilio. I can't sit there and smile while they sell me." "You must," he said, his voice hard. "You live in their world. You must play by their rules until you are strong enough to break them." "I don't want to be strong alone," she said, her voice trembling. "Come with me." The silence that followed was absolute. The gulls stopped crying. The water stopped lapping against the hull. Emilio stared at her as if she had suggested they fly to the moon. "Come with you?" he repeated slowly. "To the engagement dinner? As what? Your catch of the day?" "As my guest," she said, the insanity of the idea taking root and blooming into something that felt like salvation. "My father said I could invite a friend. He assumed I meant one of the vapid debutantes from the club. I want to invite you." "Erica, this is madness," Emilio said, stepping closer. "They will destroy you for this. And they will mock me. That world, it is vicious to outsiders." "Let them mock," she said fiercely. "I want to see something real in that room. Just for one night. I want to look across the table and see a human being, not a ledger." She reached out and took his rough hand in her gloved one. "Please, if you don't come, I think I might actually shatter." He looked down at their joined hands, his expression warring between caution and a reckless desire that mirrored her own. He traced the line of her wrist with his thumb. "I have no tuxedo, Erica. I have no standing. I don't care about the clothes." She lied, though she knew her mother would have an apoplexy. "I care about the man." He sighed, a long exhale that sounded like surrender. "There is a suit," he muttered, almost to himself, "in the sea chest, from a previous life." He looked up, his dark eyes burning. "If I do this, it is not to cause a scene. It is to ensure you are not alone in the lion's den." "That is all I ask," she whispered. "Very well," he said. "But warn your father. Tell him you are bringing a distinct guest. Do not blindside him completely, or he will have me arrested before the appetizers." Erica nodded, feeling a rush of adrenaline so potent it made her dizzy. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet," Emilio said ominously. "You do not know who you are inviting to your table." She ran back to the manor, her heart pounding. She told her father she had invited a local entrepreneur she had met, someone with unique insights into coastal trade. Her father, distracted by the flower arrangements, barely listened, waving his hand in dismissal. When 7 o'clock came, the drawing room was filled with diamonds and black ties. Cornelius was holding court by the fireplace, droning on about interest rates. Erica stood by the door, her breath caught in her throat, wondering if Emilio would actually come. Then the butler cleared his throat, his face a mask of confusion and disdain. "Signor Emilio Mazzi," he announced. The room went silent. Emilio stood in the doorway. He was not wearing a fisherman's rags. He was wearing a tuxedo of such impeccable cut and midnight blue fabric that it made Cornelius's expensive suit look like a rental. His hair was slicked back, revealing the sharp, aristocratic lines of his face. He didn't look like a laborer. He looked like a king in exile. But as he walked into the room, the whispers started. The smell of salt was gone, replaced by a scent of expensive cologne and danger. The silence that had befallen the room was not one of respect, but of profound, stunned confusion. It was the silence of a predator entering a pen of prize sheep. Erica watched, transfixed, as Emilio moved across the parquet floor. He did not walk like a man afraid of judgment. He walked with the fluidity of a fencer, his steps measured and silent. Cornelius Ashford III was the first to break the spell. He adjusted his monocle, his face flushing a mottled red. "Who is this?" he demanded, looking from Emilio to Erica's father. "Graham, is this some sort of entertainment?" "He is my guest," Erica said, her voice ringing clearer than she felt. She stepped forward to meet Emilio, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. Up close, the transformation was even more startling. The rough stubble was gone, his jawline sharp enough to cut glass. But it was his eyes, they retained the watchful intensity of the docks, scanning the room not with awe, but with a tactical assessment. "Signorina Graham," Emilio said, bowing over her hand. He did not kiss it, but hovered mere millimeters above the glove, a gesture of old-world courtliness that made the other men's handshakes seem barbaric. "You look radiant. The emerald suits you far better than the chains they try to drape you in." The whisper was for her alone, but the smile he gave the room was dazzling and entirely cold. "I am Emilio Mazzi," he announced to the room, his voice projecting effortlessly. "A recent arrival to your charming coast." Erica was kind enough to extend an invitation. Her father, recovering from his shock, blustered forward. "Mazzi? I don't know the name. What is your business, sir?" "Banking? Rail? Import and export," Emilio said smoothly, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing tray without looking at it. "Specializing in difficult logistics. Problem-solving, one might say." "Import?" Cornelius sniffed, sensing a rival. "From where?" "The colonies. From Naples, primarily, though my associates operate globally." Emilio took a sip of the wine and grimaced almost imperceptibly. "A 1904 vintage. A bold choice, Mr. Graham, though perhaps it has turned slightly in the cellar. The corkage seems compromised." Her father turned purple. "I assure you, sir, my cellar is impeccable." "Of course," Emilio conceded with a small, terrifying smile. "But rot often starts where one cannot see it." The dinner was a masterclass in social warfare. Erica had expected Emilio to be awkward, to need her protection. Instead, she found herself watching a wolf dissect a pack of hounds. When the mayor tried to humiliate him with a question about Italian politics, Emilio pivoted to a discussion of Roman infrastructure that left the mayor looking uneducated. When Cornelius tried to boast about his new steam yacht, Emilio asked a single technical question about the boiler pressure displacement that revealed Cornelius knew nothing about his own vessel. He was charming, brilliant, and utterly terrifying, but Erica noticed something else. Every time the service door swung open, Emilio's hand twitched toward the inside of his jacket, and his eyes kept darting to a man standing in the shadows near the orchestra, a man Erica didn't recognize, with a scar through his eyebrow and a bulky fit to his suit. "You're nervous," Erica whispered to him during the fish course. "Alert," he corrected, his voice barely audible over the clinking of silver. "There is a man here who was not invited, the one by the harp." "I don't know him," Erica whispered back, fear spiking through the thrill of the evening. "I do," Emilio said, his grip on his fork tightening until his knuckles bleached. "His name is Luca, and he is an enforcer for the Camorra." "The what?" "The Syndicate," Emilio murmured. "The family I left behind. Erica, listen to me carefully. When I give the signal, you must go to the terrace. Do not run, walk, and do not look back." "I'm not leaving you," she hissed. "You will," he said, turning his dark gaze on her. The playfulness was gone. "Because if you stay, you will see blood on your mother's tablecloths, and I cannot protect you in a crossfire." Before she could argue, The man by the harp began to move. He reached into his coat, not for a cigarette case, but for something heavy and metallic. The violence happened so fast that half the room didn't even realize the dinner party had turned into a battlefield. One moment, Emilio was complimenting the Countess of Hale on her diamond brooch. The next, he had kicked the heavy oak table upward, flipping it onto its side. Plates, crystal, and roast pheasant crashed to the floor in a chaotic avalanche. Screams erupted as the guests scrambled back, champagne soaking their evening gowns. "Down!" Emilio roared, shoving Erica behind the overturned table, just as a gunshot shattered the mirror where her head had been moments before. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. The man named Luca was advancing, a heavy revolver in his hand, firing with calm precision. The wood of the table splintered near Erica's ear. "He's reloading," Emilio said, his voice terrifyingly calm amidst the shrieking socialites. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and pulled out not a gun, but a slender, weighted throwing knife. "Stay here." Emilio vaulted over the barricade of the table. He didn't look like a fisherman now, nor a gentleman. He moved like smoke. Luca raised his gun, but Emilio was already inside his guard. There was a flash of silver, a sickening thud, and a gargled cry. Luca dropped the gun, clutching his wrist where the knife was embedded, pinning his hand to his own chest. Emilio followed up with a spinning kick that sent the assassin crashing into the grand piano, the discordant twang of strings underscoring the violence. The room was in bedlam. Cornelius was cowering behind a potted palm. Erica's father was shouting for the police. Emilio grabbed Erica's hand, pulling her up from the floor. "We have to go. He won't be alone." You stabbed him," Erica gasped, stumbling over the debris. "He was trying to kill you to get to me," Emilio said, dragging her toward the terrace doors. "The side gate. My boat. Move." They burst out into the cool night air, leaving the ruin of her social life behind. The run down the cliff path was a nightmare of torn silk and gasping breath. Erica lost a shoe but didn't stop. The adrenaline was a cold fire in her veins. She wasn't terrified, or rather, she was. But she was also more alive than she had ever been in the drawing rooms of Graymore. As they reached the docks, the sound of a whistle cut through the night, a sharp, trilling sound from the top of the cliff. "More of them," Emilio cursed. He practically threw her onto the deck of La Speranza and began untying the moorings with frantic speed. "Get below deck. I can help," Erica shouted, grabbing a boat hook. "You don't know how to steer, and you don't know how to shoot," he snapped, shoving the boat off the dock. He cranked the engine, the old motor coughing to life with a roar that masked the sound of footsteps pounding down the pier. As the boat pulled away into the black water, bullets sparked off the metal railing. Emilio steered with one hand, crouching low, guiding them out of the harbor and into the open sea. Only when the lights of the town had faded to distant pinpricks did he kill the engine, letting the boat drift in the silence of the ocean. He slumped against the wheel, exhaling a breath that shuddered. Erica stood in the cockpit, her dress ruined, her hair wild, one foot bare. She looked at the man who had just dismantled an assassin with a dinner knife. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Really?" Emilio looked at her, and the mask finally fell away completely. The arrogance of the dinner party and the humility of the fisherman were both gone. What remained was a man carrying the weight of a kingdom. "My name is Emilio Dante di Napoli," he said quietly. "Until 6 months ago, I was the capo dei capi, the head of the Neapolitan Syndicate, and the man I just hurt was my cousin." The cabin of La Speranza was small, smelling of oil and old wood, a far cry from the velvet-lined parlors Erica was accustomed to. She sat on a narrow bunk, wrapping a rough wool blanket around her shivering shoulders. Emilio paced the small space, the tuxedo looking absurdly out of place in the cramped quarters. He poured 2 glasses of cheap grappa and handed one to her. "Drink," he ordered. "It will stop the shaking." Erica took a sip. The liquid burned like fire, but it grounded her. "You're a mobster," she said flatly. "A criminal. A prince," he corrected, sitting heavily on a crate opposite her. "There is a difference, though the law does not see it. My family. We have ruled the underworld of Naples for 3 centuries. We kept order. We protected the neighborhoods the police ignored. We were the law where there was no law. And you ran away?" "I was betrayed," Emilio said, staring into his glass. "My uncle, Don Salvatore. He believed the old ways were too soft. He wanted to move into darker trades, opium, flesh, things my father forbade, and things I forbade when I took the chair." He looked up at Erica, his eyes pleading for understanding. They killed my loyalists in a single night, the night of the traitors. I barely escaped with my life. I came here because it was the last place they would look, a sleepy English coast where nothing happens. Until tonight, Erica whispered. I grew careless, Emilio admitted bitterly. I let myself be seen. I let myself. He looked at her. I let myself want something other than survival. Me, you, he confirmed. And now I have dragged you into the crosshairs. Luca will have signaled the others. Salvatore will send a hunting party. They cannot let me live, Erica. As long as I breathe, I am a threat to his claim on the throne. Erica looked down at her hands, the hands of a pianist, a writer, a girl who had never known physical danger, but she remembered the rush of the escape. The feeling of breaking free from the suffocating cage of her life. She looked at Emilio, a man of violence who had treated her with more respect than any gentleman she had ever met. So what do we do? She asked. Emilio blinked. Signora, at first light I am putting you ashore at the next town. You will go to the police. I can't go back, she said, surprising herself. My reputation is ruined. My father will disown me, and if I go back, I'm just a sitting duck for your uncle's men, aren't I? If they think I mean something to you, they'll use me. Emilio went still. He knew she was right. Erica, this life, it is blood and running. It is not a romance novel. I don't want a romance novel, she said, standing up. The blanket fell away, revealing the torn emerald dress. She looked like a fallen queen. I want a life that is mine, even if it's a dangerous one. Emilio stood too, closing the distance between them. The air in the cabin grew heavy. If you stay on this boat, he warned low, there is no going back to the manor. You become an accessory. You become a target. I was already a target, she said fiercely. I was a target for a marriage that would have killed my soul. I'd rather risk my body. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. Then you must learn. If you are to be the consort of an exiled prince, you must know how to fight. The next 3 days were a blur of exhaustion and harsh lessons. They anchored in hidden coves during the day and moved only at night. Emilio taught Erica how to strip and clean the revolver he kept in the sea chest, though he insisted she primarily learn to use the boat's old hunting rifle, which offered better stability. He taught her how to knife fight using a wooden dowel, leaving bruises on her arms that she wore like badges of honor. She learned that the simple fisherman persona was a masterpiece of acting. Emilio, or Dante, as he asked her to call him when they were alone, was a strategist. He had maps of the entire European coastline memorized. He had contacts in ports from Marseille to Dover, but the hunter was closing in. On the 4th night, they docked in a small fishing village up the coast to refuel. Dante went ashore to find supplies. Erica stayed on the boat, cleaning the fuel filters as he had taught her. A shadow fell across the hatch. Erica froze, her hand closing around the heavy wrench. Emilio, she called out softly. Not quite. A voice purred. It wasn't Dante. It was a voice like grinding stones. A man dropped into the cabin. He was massive, with a shaved head and a suit that strained against his bulk. He held a silenced pistol. The little bird, the man smiled. Salvatore pays a high price for the prince, but he pays double for the woman who made him sloppy. Erica didn't think. She threw the wrench with all her strength. It struck the man in the shoulder, throwing off his aim as he fired. The bullet shattered a lantern, plunging the cabin into semi-darkness. Erica scrambled over the bunk, diving for the sea chest where the revolver was hidden. The man lunged, grabbing her ankle. She kicked out, her heel connecting with his nose, but his grip was like iron. She dragged herself toward the gun, her fingers brushing the cold metal just as he pulled her back. Desperate, she twisted her body, bringing the gun around blindly. He was on top of her now, his weight crushing. Steady, Dante's voice whispered in her memory, but there was no time to be steady. She jammed the barrel against the bulk of his torso and pulled the trigger. The shot was deafening in the confined space. The man convulsed, his grip slackening instantly, and he collapsed sideways, gasping. Steps thundered on the deck above. Dante dropped through the hatch, his knife already drawn. He saw the bleeding man, the smoking gun in Erica's trembling hand, and the look of cold shock on her face. He didn't hesitate. He finished the job with a single, efficient motion that Erica turned away from. "Are you hurt?" he demanded, grabbing her shoulders, checking her for wounds. I shot him," she whispered, looking at her hands. They were covered in grease and gun smoke. "He was on top of me." You saved yourself, Dante said fiercely, realizing how close it had been. He kissed her forehead. Hard. You did what a queen of Naples does. You survived. He searched the dead man's pockets and found a folded, water-stained note. His face went pale as he read it. What is it? Erica asked, her voice returning. It's not just a hunting party, Dante said, crumpling the paper. Salvatore is here, in England, and he's not just using his own men. He's using your father's ships. The revelation hit Erica harder than the physical violence. My father? That's impossible. He's a legitimate businessman. Is he? Dante spread the note on the small table. This message confirms a shipment of Neapolitan olive oil, arriving on the Graham Star tomorrow night. It is not oil, Erica. It is opium. Your father's ships have been the Syndicate's transport line for years. Maybe he knows, maybe he doesn't. But Salvatore is using Graymore's warehouses as his base of operations. Erica felt sick. The wealth that had bought her silk dresses, the manor, the education, it was all funded by the very poison Dante had tried to stop. Her cage wasn't just gilded. It was rotten. We have to stop it, she said. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. If we destroy that shipment, we cripple Salvatore's expansion into England, and we expose the truth. It is suicide, Dante said. The docks will be crawling with Camorra. They won't be looking for us to attack, Erica argued. They think we're running. They think I'm a frightened socialite and you're a deposed king looking for a hole to hide in. They won't expect the Graham daughter to burn down her own legacy. Dante looked at her with a mixture of awe and fear. You would do that? Destroy your family's name? My family's name is already destroyed, she said. I want to build a new one. They spent the night planning. Dante knew the tactics of the Camorra. Erica knew the layout of the Graham warehouses better than any architect. She had played in them as a child. She knew the ventilation shafts, the forgotten cellar doors, the drainage tunnels. We don't just destroy the shipment, Dante said, tracing a line on the harbor map. We draw Salvatore out. He is arrogant. If he thinks the shipment is threatened, he will come personally to oversee it. And then, Dante said, touching the hilt of his knife. The prince returns. The Graham shipping yards were shrouded in fog. The massive cranes looked like skeletal dinosaurs looming in the mist. Erica and Dante moved through the drainage tunnel, the water freezing against their legs. They emerged inside Warehouse 4, hiding behind a stack of crates labeled machinery parts. The warehouse was bustling. Men with submachine guns, Tommy guns, the American sailors called them, patrolled the catwalks. In the center, under the harsh electric lights, crates were being pried open to reveal bricks of raw opium. And there, overseeing it all, was a man who looked like an older, crueler version of Dante, Don Salvatore. He wore a camel hair coat and smoked a thin cigar, laughing with, Erica gasped, laughing with Cornelius Ashford. So, Dante whispered, his eyes narrowing. The banker is the financier. Your engagement wasn't just a merger of wealth. It was a merger of criminal enterprises. They sold me to seal a drug deal. Erica realized, her grip on the hunting rifle tightening until her knuckles were white. I was collateral. Let's make them regret the investment, Dante said. Erica moved to the upper gantry, a position she could reach via the old maintenance ladders she used to climb as a rebellious child. Dante moved toward the fuel drums stored near the loading bay. At the signal, a bird call that sounded entirely natural. Erica used the rifle's scope to sight the heavy cable holding a suspended crate of engine parts. She wasn't a marksman, but the chain was thick and stationary. She fired. The cable snapped. The massive crate plummeted, smashing directly into the main fuse box on the wall. Sparks showered down, and the warehouse plunged into darkness. Chaos erupted, shouts, confusion, the beam of flashlights cutting through the gloom. Dante lit a flare and tossed it onto the fuel drums he had uncapped moments before. Whoosh! A wall of fire roared up, separating the Camorra men from the exit. The opium crates began to catch, the acrid smoke filling the air. Fire! Save the product! Salvatore screamed. In the confusion, Dante moved. He didn't attack from the shadows. He stepped directly into the firelight, silhouetted against the flames like a demon. Uncle! He roared. Salvatore froze. He peered through the smoke. Emilio, you ghost. I am no ghost, Dante called out, walking steadily toward the group of armed men. I am the judgment you thought you could escape. Salvatore laughed nervously. Kill him. He is one man with a knife. But before the men could fire, Shots rang out from the darkness above. Erica wasn't aiming at the men she knew she couldn't hit them. Instead, she fired wildly into the metal piping running along the ceiling, the ricochets and the noise creating the illusion of a much larger force. Panic seized the mercenaries. The fire was spreading fast, and they broke rank, diving for the exits. It was just Dante and Salvatore now, a circle of fire closing in around them. Cornelius was cowering near the opium, trying to stuff bricks into his jacket, weeping. "You ruined everything!" Salvatore screamed, pulling a gold-plated pistol. Dante didn't flinch. He threw his knife. The knife didn't kill Salvatore. It struck the pistol, knocking it from his hand with a metallic clang. Salvatore clutched his numbed fingers, stumbling back. He looked at the fire, then at the exit, and turned to run. "No," Dante growled. He sprinted, tackling his uncle just as he reached the loading bay doors. They crashed to the ground, rolling amidst the soot and ash. Salvatore fought dirty, clawing at Dante's eyes, but he was an old man grown soft on power. Dante was a man forged by betrayal. He pinned Salvatore's arm behind his back with a sickening crunch and slammed his head against the concrete floor. Salvatore went limp, unconscious but alive. "Erica! The police are coming! I can hear the sirens!" Dante shouted, standing over his fallen kin. Erica climbed down the ladder, soot smudging her face, the rifle slung over her shoulder. She walked past the whimpering Cornelius, who looked up at her in terror. "Erica, please," Cornelius begged. "I can explain. It was business." She looked at him with profound pity. "You're right, Cornelius. It's just business." She kicked the pile of opium bricks nearest him into the encroaching fire. "Run, Cornelius," she said coldly. He didn't need telling twice. He scrambled past her, weeping, toward the cool air of the loading dock. Dante dragged the unconscious Salvatore out of the smoking warehouse and onto the damp concrete of the loading dock, away from the intense heat. He grabbed a length of rope from a pallet and quickly bound his uncle's hands and feet to the heavy metal railing. "He won't be running anywhere," Dante said grimly. "When the police find him here with the drugs, the banker, and the fire, he will rot in an English cell. That is a fate worse than death for a man like him." They slipped away into the fog just as the police wagons screeched into the yard, lights flashing against the mist. They watched from the deck of La Speranza, anchored a mile out, as the flames of the warehouse lit up the night sky. The empire of the Graham shipping fortune and the Naples Syndicate's English branch was burning to the ground. "It's over," Erica said softly. "My inheritance, my name, it's all gone." "You have nothing," Dante agreed, moving to stand beside her at the rail. He took her hand, his touch gentle. "You are a woman with no country, no fortune, and a criminal record if they ever find us." "It sounds wonderful," she said, looking up at him. Dante smiled, and for the first time, it was a smile of pure, unburdened joy. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. It wasn't a weapon. It was a ring heavy gold, bearing the crest of the serpent and laurels. The ring of the capo. He looked at it for a moment, then tossed it into the dark water. It sank without a sound. "The Prince of Naples is dead," he said. "He died in that fire." He turned to Erica, pulling her close. The smell of smoke and sea salt was on them both. "So," he asked, "where shall a simple fisherman and his partner go next? I hear the Americas are wild this time of year." Erica Graham, former heiress and current fugitive, kissed the man who had freed her. "West," she said. "Take me west." As La Speranza turned her bow toward the open Atlantic, Erica didn't look back at the burning coast of England. She looked forward, into the dark, dangerous, and infinite freedom of the sea.
Hey there, if you've made it to the end and haven't subscribed yet, this is the perfect time to become part of this family. Also, do tell me in the comments what struck you most about the story. What was the greatest lesson it left you? I try to read all the comments, and I love knowing how these stories move you. Finally, I just want to say, thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed it, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazy and even more intriguing than you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.